Pushing for 50,000 subscribers here on GlobeTrotting. If you haven't already hit that button, it would be greatly appreciated. The relationship between an airline and a manufacturer is unlike any other. These relationships can directly relate to securing additional business and much more. However, while these relationships can be fostered across multiple decades in some cases, and result in purchases being in the tens of billions, they won't always guarantee future purchases head that way, as things can change at a moment's notice. The relationship between Boeing and Delta has been extensive for some time. It only takes a quick look at their current fleet of aircraft, which features some fantastic aircraft produced by Boeing. And then when we stretch as far back as their historic fleet, well, it naturally indicates that there were more Boeing aircraft types present. However, just like many companies worldwide, changes and strategy shifts have occurred through the years. As part of a recent overhaul to the fleet, which has included major streamlining, Delta, more than any airline, could have been described as bloated concerning the aircraft it flies, and it's moved away from Boeing and to Airbus. Why is this? Well, let me explore that very question more in depth this time. Let's begin with the 737 MAX. When examining the fleet and also future fleet, one of the standout aircraft types that will be forming an integral part of the future is the MAX. Delta committed to 100 of these only recently. At the same time, such a deal was deemed perfect due to its commonality with other aircraft types and a cockpit design that the company was familiar with, and something that they have relied on heavily with previous generations across previous decades. Acquiring such a type wouldn't really require as much training and comes, as we know, with fuel efficiency. The orders are for the 737-10, the largest member of the series, which brings additional capacity. However, away from this, the future is most definitely Airbus, from the A330neo to the A350 and onwards to some of your smaller aircraft, the A321neo and the former C-Series now known as the A220. These aircraft types already occupy a vital role in the fleet. However, many would argue that in the future, this will grow more as older Boeing jets begin to be retired and make way for more of these orders finally being turned into actual aircraft flying at the airline. So let's begin with one of the key reasons as to why Delta may look to switch allegiances. Deals. Airlines are loyal, yes, but when push comes to shove, it's all about what they're being offered, and if a more lucrative purchase lies in the hands of another plane maker, they may just very well take up that offer. We've seen this happen several times before, when say an all Airbus or even an all Boeing operator have switched. In the case of Delta, well, they weren't foreign to Airbus-produced planes, and by all means they're not completely making a hard switch. They've always, though, been trying to chase the best deal available. Aircraft types, such as the A330, which have been operational for some time, have the A330neo as their replacement, and for a company like Delta, while the 787 is the alternative to the A330neo, they've had a bit of a messy history with that plane. Again, sticking with commonality, the A330neo just is the perfect replacement to the A330s, with bucket loads of improvements in the efficiency category, which is something the airline is actively looking towards. Also, in terms of the overall backlog for deliveries for the A330neo, well, it's not all that huge, as the interest for this plane hasn't really been there. I digress, but it's essential to understand that when these airlines can take delivery of planes will play a role too. This all encompasses the idea that deals and aircraft capabilities are hugely important, but if the perfect plane isn't readily available at the right time, you may just be forced to go elsewhere, and that's precisely where the next point of this analysis goes. The idea of not having the perfect aircraft and being forced to head elsewhere. I've had the opportunity to speak to insiders at the airline and those close to it several times regarding their fleet. It's safe to assume that the fleet makeup at Delta would have looked significantly different had Boeing just done one thing ever so slightly different, launching their NMA that was long rumoured in the latter stages of the 2010s as an adequate 757 and 767 replacement. These two aircraft types are to this day still ones Delta relies on heavily, and they've really struggled to find a replacement for them. It must be said they wouldn't be the only ones, but they've certainly been very vocal about it. Delta has been forced to try and find a replacement for these aircraft, and ultimately, the not perfect but closest thing comes from Airbus. Thus, they've gone on to order the A321neo series in sheer numbers, and try to mitigate some losses in capacity with maybe the A330neo and balancing it all out with A350s. So yes, while the MAX features, you do have every reason to believe that if Boeing had launched their NMA, the reliance on Airbus certainly wouldn't have been as strong, as the answer they would have been ideally looking for would have been present in Boeing's new aircraft. A recent commitment to the A350-1000, which, might I add, was very long rumoured, has only increased their reliance on the Airbus product. The A350-1000 is the perfect high-capacity option, and you'd argue even more enticing for a company that flies the A350-900 already. It is all about commonality. Why introduce a new aircraft type unless absolutely necessary if there is an alternative variant that can give you positive repercussions as a company? We've seen this all too many times. We're seeing it happen with the 787. For companies that have one of these variants, they find it very easy to then move from the Dash 8 to the Dash 10 or the Dash 9. The associated costs in introducing a completely new fleet type would be significant, and for the moment at least, Delta sees positive things elsewhere. When factoring in that the company is also looking to streamline and understanding what streamlining means for companies, it means trying to not have 50 different aircraft types operational and condensing them to just what they need. Others will say that the reliance on Airbus aircraft comes from how they produce aircraft. These planes are better suited to Delta's needs, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't inherently mean that Boeing is producing bad aircraft, because their aircraft work for different companies. Some would go on to argue, though, too, that innovation has been lacking at the American plane maker, and it's seen it fall back. Words that could be ushered by a critical order decision by Delta, among many others. But you'd definitely say there are far bigger problems at the plane maker now than innovation. These factors that I've touched on are all really essential to consider when understanding why an airline may look towards switching allegiances or focusing more so on a different aircraft manufacturer. And the reality is that's not even me looking at such important factors such as the cost of the plane, more so the offer, the cost seat mile, and these things that teams spend years and years analysing before making a purchase. So don't worry, there are many other factors, but if we really break it down, these can be determined as some of the core principles on their decision. So it's over to you. Do you believe that Airbus-produced aircraft are truly the way forward for Delta? Are you excited to see the 737 MAX flying? And I'd love to hear your opinion on if Boeing had proceeded with an NMA. Do you believe Delta would have ordered it in sheer numbers, and that may have then changed the way Delta strategized its future outlook? Thanks a lot for your support here on GlobeTrotting. If you are new to the channel, do be sure to take care and also be safe. I greatly appreciate the support, like I always say, and I'll see you next time.